See, the truth is, before whatever happened that put me in here was the last time I remember being happy. And I ask them, well, how long have you been here? And they usually say, 2 years, 5 years, 7 years, 10 years in a bed on their back with no control over anything in their life except for the remote control on their TV and their bed that goes back and forth. And those are the two things in their life that they control. They are legally alive, but they are spiritually and emotionally dying. And it kills me. It's so sad to see people who are alive, but they're really dead. And I don't want that for any of you. So I've seen statistics, and these statistics say that we're living longer than we did ever. That our life expectancy is greater than it's ever been. So I want to tell you something, that's an absolute lie. It's an absolute lie. Unless you realize it's a lie, you won't want to do something about it. So let me explain something to you, that our average lifespan has gained about 30 years since the 1800s. And at the turn of the century, 20% of babies died during the birth process. That means that officially they lived one day, 20%. Now, if everybody then was living to be 80 years old and 20% of them died after one day, that would actually drag the average down to 64 years. One single statistic. And it did. Infant mortality was followed by workplace accidents, war, and the plague as the leading cause of death. Those four causes of death actually accounted for 80% of the people who died, and today they account for less than 1%. All four of those things adversely affected the very young. Young men went to war. Young men built factories during the economic revolution. That's why workplace accidents were so high. And all of those deaths together that were once 80% are now, not 80%, that were once 40% are now less than 1%. And the leading causes of death today, by the way, statistically, in case you weren't following me, 100% of that gain, that 35% increase in our life, 100% of it is wiped out statistically because of those causes of death, which disproportionately affected the young. I don't want to talk to statistically or scientifically, but I think most of you know what I'm talking about. We have been lied to. And during those same 100 years, rates of cancer, rates of heart disease, rates of diabetes, rates of emphysema, unprecedented obesity and suffering are the result. So we are not healthier, we are not living longer, and we do not have a better chance of survival today than we did 100 years ago, and that is wrong. How do we change that? How do we change that? How do we personally change the trajectory of our life? If we are human beings potentially on the precipice of extinction, how do we change that? And that's why I'm here. We change that by changing the food, by providing pure, organic, raw superfoods. We change that by making those convenient, by making those something that could be a lifestyle that you could live forever. So here's the typical food. The typical food has calories, and it has perhaps those different additives and all these different things. We'll call that the waste portion. And the part that you really need, the nutrient portion, may be very small. And when you compare the two, that's called a super high calorie, super low nutrient food. And that's what we see around us. Think of Twinkies and hamburgers. And then we're looking for what we provide, superfoods. Now, superfoods are like superstars of the food kingdom. And they have all of these vitamins and minerals and enzymes and phytochemicals and antioxidants and pigments and all of this wonderful stuff. And when you look at the part our body needs to get rid of, it's very small. This is the ideal food. This is a super high nutrient, super low calorie food. So I've created something I call the calorie antioxidant ratio. And every single time that you're about to put something into your mouth, I want you to ask yourself a question. Is this a super high nutrient, super low calorie food? Or is this a super wasteful, super low nutrient food? And you'll begin to make better choices. You're going to ask yourself, when I eat this, is this going to make me stronger and more able to survive? Or is it going to make me weaker? And so here's the dilemma. The dilemma is, I met a woman named Jean Clement when she was 119 years old. And I looked at her, she walked in on her own. She had snappy repartee, as they say, remembered it seemed to be everybody's name. And she was incredibly alive at 119. And that very year that I met her, had lost an uncle at 60. And he looked old. He looked older than her. And I looked at her and I asked myself, why not me? And I began to study longevity, and I learned something really amazing. Here's what I learned: that scientists had found 2 ways to dramatically extend life. One was to increase the amount of antioxidants like superoxide dismutase. And the second was dramatically reduce the number of calories that was required to feed the animal. So in other words, you want to have as few calories and the most antioxidants as you can in a food. And when you created that leverage, then you created extreme longevity within animals, nearly doubling the lifespan of mammals, doubling and tripling the lifespan of earthworms, simply by increasing the amount of antioxidant enzymes and reducing the amount of waste when compared calorically, when compared to nutrients. And today, I believe that in order to achieve extreme longevity, extreme health, that we simply need to do the same, to tap into these super high nutrient, super low calorie foods. So let me give you a quick story about where this all began. I once was brought into the home of a nearly 900-pound man. He was an American Sumo champion. He was a celebrity of sorts. He had been on every show, Letterman, Leno, Jimmy Kimmel, Good Morning America. Every talk show in America had featured this guy on it at some time. And his life spiraled out of control because of some emotional issues and some personal issues, and he gained over 350 pounds. And he was sitting in this home and he was about to die. He had extreme high blood pressure, extreme diabetes, extreme edema. He had water in his heart, water in his lungs. He had every imaginable metabolic sign of death, impending death. And they came to me and they said, we want to film you saving this guy's life. And so I went to my business partners and they said, don't do it. This guy's gonna die. It's gonna be captured on film and everybody's gonna blame you. And I said, well, if I don't do it, he's gonna die and I'm gonna blame me. So I did it. I brought him up to my home in the mountains, my Native Springs oasis, and I lived with him for 5 months. And during that 5 months, he lost 300 pounds. Wow. Within 2 weeks, his high blood pressure was gone, his sleep apnea was gone, his signs of diabetes were gone, literally, the water in his heart and his lungs had drained away. His severe osteoarthritis had been relieved, and he was up off the couch and walking on his own. It was amazing. And so what I learned from working with that gentleman and with thousands and thousands of people since then has finally been validated by a study that you might have read about in my book, The Green Food Bible.